Okay, so thank you very much for that very extensive and elaborate introduction. First of all, I was just saying that it's a pleasure to be amongst us today to speak for a few minutes on a topical issue of cybersecurity. When Mr. Ayo Emakume was given the opening address, was talking about the future 5 years from now. Um, Actually, the future is here today, ladies and gentlemen. The future has come. And this is the technology age. Today, data is the new oil. That's the new oil. We're in the information age. So everything now, whatever is not capable of being digitalized now, it's not likely to survive in the next 12, 18 months. So the future has already come. It's taken a lot of us by surprise, but there it is. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And then I would like to stand on existing protocols um, adequately established. It's indeed a pleasure to have everyone here today as we gather to explore the crucial topic of cybersecurity, especially as it relates to the practice of human resources in Nigeria and across the world, for that matter. First and foremost, I'd like to express my gratitude to Coinbox for organizing this session today, to all of our speakers, and to everyone, each and every one of you attending this session today. Your participation underscores the significance of cybersecurity in today's world. It also demonstrates your commitment to ensuring the safety, confidentiality, and integrity of personnel records and data. I said earlier on that data is now the new oil. Data constitutes what we call crown jewels, and they are actually very, very valuable. As we go along in this presentation and in the subsequent presentations that you will hear, I believe that we will gain more insights and see more perspectives regarding how critical and how crucial data is. In today's digital age, where technology and connectivity have become an integral part of business, the role of cybersecurity cannot really be overstated. It serves as a bedrock of trust and confidence in our operations, as the privacy and sensitivity of human resources records must be maintained, especially in this current age of digitalization. As we navigate the ever evolving landscape of cyber threats, ladies and gentlemen, it is essential that we remain vigilant and we also proactive in our approach, because cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. At this point in time, I'm actually tempted to throw a little more light, to shed a little more perspective on that concept of cybersecurity. What is cybersecurity itself? The term cybersecurity, I hope that other speakers will speak and give us more details, simply refers to the entire gamut, the collection of all of the policies, procedures, devices, technologies that are used to secure systems, networks, data against attacks. Those attacks are called cyber attacks. And every form of mechanism, processes, including the people and the devices, as well as the technologies that work together in a collaborative manner to protect our data and computer systems and networks, are referred to as cybersecurity. And cybersecurity is not an end state. It is indeed a journey. And it is one that has, incidentally, a very big room, that room for continuous improvement. So by investing the time and resources in robust cybersecurity measures, organizations can effectively safeguard their systems and prevent unauthorized access and mitigate potential risks. So all of the systems that we use today, the applications that are used to provide service to customers, whether they are human resource services or other types of services, whether they are banking services, financial services, management, information systems type services, advisory services, whatever it is, the systems that are used for all of those services have three key components. We call the three components AIC. So in cybersecurity parlance, you have the availability of the systems, the integrity of the systems, and the confidentiality of the systems. That is AIC. A lot of people refer to these three terms as CIA, but I choose to call them AIC. They stand for the same thing: availability, integrity, and confidentiality of information systems. So cybersecurity refers to the collection of processes, policies, skills, technologies, and as well as devices that are used to protect the availability, the integrity, and confidentiality of information systems. Today's discussions will delve deep into the implications of cyber threats on HR data management in organizations. The expert speakers that have been put together will explore the challenges faced by the industry and uncover strategies and countermeasures to address these risks head-on. But beyond today's event, ladies and gentlemen, it is important to recognize that cybersecurity is a journey as well as a shared responsibility. Everyone is involved in it. Everyone is responsible for it. We all need to protect our own little spaces where we operate, where we work, what we do individually as individual consumers of services as well. There are do's and don'ts in cyberspace. Ensuring that we have secure platforms, systems, services, and data requires collaboration. It also requires curated information sharing and a collective commitment from all stakeholders. Together, we can strengthen our defenses, stay ahead of emerging threats, and foster a secure environment for our respective industries to thrive. I am truly excited about the wealth of knowledge and insights that will be shared during this event. I'm sure we saw a peep of that before the event started, during that video clip, that interview that was shown earlier on. Let us embrace this opportunity to learn, also the opportunity to unlearn as well as relearn, and then to exchange our own experiences and forge connections that will propel us all towards a more resilient, safe, and secure future. Now, what does a cyber threat landscape look like? What exactly does it look like? When we say there will be cyber attacks, and so the availability, the integrity, and confidentiality of our data, of our systems, and our networks all need to be protected. What is that threat landscape, by the way? What does it look like? Now, I won't attempt to go into too much detail at this point. I'm sure that the speakers would speak more in detail. But I'll take just one or two or three, especially as they relate to the HR function. Okay, so the first thing to note about the threat landscape is that it is one space, a space that is always evolving. It is always changing, i.e., the attack space. It might interest you to note that, for instance, on a daily basis, take the annual basis, for instance, you have over 500 million phishing attacks reported last year, 2022. Over 500 phishing attacks. There were also over 493 million phishing attacks. So 500 million phishing attacks and about approximately 493 million ransomware attacks, 2022. These were the attacks that were reported globally. And it's also interesting to note that not all the attacks were reported, but these are the ones that were actually recorded. 500 million phishing attacks, 493 million ransomware attacks, 2022. So for that to happen, you can just imagine how busy that space is, especially for those who were being attacked, for those who were reporting, those who were being attacked and who did not report, as well as those who were attacked and did not even know that they were attacked. And so for this purpose, I classify all businesses into two categories. Those category A, those who have been attacked and they are aware, and those who have been attacked and they don't even know that they have been attacked. Those are the two categories. What that simply means is that all organizations have been attacked one way or the other. And the list you see here, the list of the attack typologies that you see on the screen, this list is not even comprehensive. I call it a redacted list because, there's no point throwing in everything here, especially if most of the participants on this call today are, HR related experts or professionals. So I try to put in items that we can relate with on an easy basis. All right. So some of the typologies here, you see general phishing and spear phishing attacks. That's what you see mostly on the cyber threat landscape. So all of those what are general phishing attacks, by the way? Those are those email messages or SMS messages or essentially WhatsApp messages, whatever type of message that you receive that is being sent by an attacker in order to gain information from you, to steal your information, or to have unauthorized access to data and systems, or the objective is actually ultimately to steal your money. Those messages are called phishing messages. Then you want to go specifically into, if there are SMS messages, then you call them smishing messages. And if it is voice calls, sometimes people still receive voice calls. We call them phishing attacks. But let us focus on phishing messages, general messages that we receive, especially through email, through WhatsApp, all of those messages that are designed to fool people so that people can actually, you click on the link and then, unfortunately, once you click on the link, there's a rogue program that is running underneath. And those programs can do a lot of damage. Some of them can actually install they can install keystroke loggers, or what is called key loggers for short, on your systems. And everything you type, there is a rogue program running underneath. It will be sending the keys to a control or command center somewhere else, and you will not know. To just be sending an email message underneath, and you will not be aware. So those general phishing messages are very many. And in 2022, like I said, over 500 phishing messages were recorded, of 500 million phishing attacks. What about spear phishing? Spear phishing refers to a specific targeted attack. So the message, the phishing message, is not one that was sent to a lot of people. The message is sent to specific persons or organizations that the attackers want to hack. That's the difference between the general phishing message. So a general phishing message can go to 1,000,000 people or 100,000 users or 50,000 users. The attackers don't know them. And when you receive those messages, you will know that the person sending you this message does not know you. But people don't pay, because people do not pay enough attention. That's why they fall victim to such messages. The spear phishing ones are more deadly, and they're actually more difficult to spot because they are sent to specific targets. What about social engineering attacks? We see social engineering attacks every day. They are everywhere. These are the attacks that focus on human beings, on our human emotions. And we call this group of attacks, this attack typology, as hacking humans, because it is the human element that is actually the target of this attack. So somebody knows that you are a nice person, and the person sends you a message showing a child who has a heavy bandage at the abdomen, and the message is that, please help, help, help. This child will die in the next 6 hours. Just send only 25,000 naira to this bank account. That kind of message, social engineering attack. People will just start crediting the account. Meanwhile, the fraudster will be using the money, and there's no child that is sick. I'm sure that we've seen those kinds of messages. And sometimes you receive a message saying that your bank account has been blocked, or your ATM card has been blocked, or your account is being upgraded. Please, you must do something, and if you don't do it, something will happen, or your account will no longer work, or you receive a phone call and somebody is talking to you, pretending to be a colleague who is somewhere else, who is stranded and he needs help. Those kinds of attacks, or up to even what you call tailgating attacks. They are all part of hacking the human beings, social engineering type of attacks involving either human kindness or human emotions. So you have a card, your access card, to open a door. You open the door and somebody else is following you into the office or following you into that space, and the person is just walking away, and you too, you're walking away. That is a form of social engineering attack. In the offices, people use their systems. They are logging onto their ID, logging onto their profiles, putting in their IDs and passwords. Somebody else is standing there and looking. That's called shoulder surfing. Person is looking over your shoulders, looking at your keypad, and takes note of your password or your PIN. A lot of people do not pay attention to these things. That is also a social engineering attack. And then the information can be used, your ID and password can be used to log onto the system when you are not there, and whatever is done will be traced to you, whereas somebody else has done the action. So that is a problem. There are many different types of social engineering attacks. Even in organizations, somebody can pretend to be a staff who is not a staff and send a message or call HR and pretend to be asking about somebody else. The HR person wants to be nice, and you provide all the information, and at the end of the day, the information can be misused or used for fraudulent purposes. What about ransomware? We see a lot of ransomware attacks. Again, I mentioned that 2022 ransomware attacks reported globally were 493 million. If you think about what's happening in the physical realm, like especially some parts, the northeastern part of Nigeria, some part of especially, Zamfara State, Niger State, etc., where you still have a bit of kidnapping, and then somewhere in the southeast, a bit of kidnapping, somewhere in the Midwest, where people are kidnapped, and then you pay a ransom, and then the victim is released. If you put that on the digital space, ransomware simply refers to digital kidnapping. In this case, your computer system is encrypted, is blocked. You cannot have access to the system. You do not have access to the data. And then the attacker will ask you to pay a ransom. Usually that ransom is paid in the form of cryptocurrency. And once that ransom is paid, then they release back your files. That is what ransomware is. It's a very big problem globally. It happens in Nigeria. It happens in other countries in Africa. It happens in the US, in the UK, all parts of the world. Ransomware is happening. It's a very big problem. If you imagine that there were 493 million cases reported in 2022, step back and see how many ransomware cases happened in one day. That is over a million, about 1,300,000 on average per day. That's a very big problem. So, and it's still happening, digital kidnapping. Every organization can be attacked. And so it's important that we're all first of all aware, and then we take basic measures and precautions to ensure that when the attack happens, it is no longer a question of if it will happen. When it happens, we are prepared and we know how to identify such attacks and how to respond to the attacks and to recover from the attacks. And I believe that is part of the objective of today's engagement. So that's ransomware, otherwise known as digital kidnapping, where access to systems are blocked through encryption by the hackers, and then the victims are required to pay a ransom before they are given back their data or before they are given back access to their systems. And then a very popular one that we have in Nigeria, which is quite unfortunate, are the employment scams. These are also cyber attacks. Almost on a daily or weekly basis, these messages are going around. You have been profiled for a job, 50,000 naira per day, please. And they will indicate a telephone number. In some cases, they will indicate a link. And it is a big problem, the employment scams. And I'm sure we've heard about how people went and applied to these agencies and based on the messages they received, and how they eventually ended up being physically kidnapped in some cases. In other cases, there were further extortions going on as well. And then business email compromise attacks. This is a particularly difficult one, especially for HRO practitioners, because a lot of the messages get compromised. The message is trapped and then modified and released to employees, in some cases vendors, in some cases management. It's a big problem. Business email compromise, otherwise known as BEC attacks. You will think the message is actually coming from your MD. The message is not coming from the MD. It's coming from somebody else who is an attacker or a hacker. And HRO practitioners have been known to actually take action. A lot of those types of messages, which are BEC messages, business email compromise messages, and a lot of havoc has been reported over the past 3, 4, 5 years. NIN scams, this happen from time to time. Password and ID theft, especially on WhatsApp, this is steadily rising. I'm sure that we've heard about it. Some of us have experienced it, where a hacker will just take over the WhatsApp profile of somebody and then start using it to ask for money around the whole place. Then you have the DOS and DDoS attacks. I hope the further speakers will talk about this, which is preventing you. This actually attacks the availability pillar of your systems, of your data. The DOS stands for denial of service. DDoS stands for distributed denial of service. So that's DOS attacks and DDoS attacks, denial of service attacks and distributed denial of service attacks. We see a lot of that on the horizon. In some cases, people do not even know that they are under a DOS or DDoS attack. All they just know is that their systems keep rolling and rolling. They cannot access the system. They don't know that it's specific attacks. What of whaling attacks? Whaling attacks also are a form of phishing, spear phishing attacks, but to only the very, very important VIPs. That's whaling attack. So it comes from the concept of whales, the whales in the waters, in the oceans. When you attack a very big fish, specifically, that's a whaling attack. Or there could be the different attacks we see on the horizon, could be a combination of all of these. So these are just some of the types of cyber threats that we see on the horizon. Now, what about fines and penalties that have been given out, issued to organizations in the past few months or the past few years? This is one area that we all need to pay particular attention to. The reason is that in Nigeria, for instance, we have a new law on data privacy, which is the Nigerian Data Privacy or that Nigerian Data Protection Law. That was signed into effect by our new president in the month of June. Before that, we had the NDPR, Nigeria Data Protection Regulation. That's for Nigeria. Across the world, there are other types of laws, data protection laws. You have the General Data Protection Regulation. I hope the other speakers will speak about that as well. The point I'm trying to make here is that there are huge penalties for not protecting, for not keeping safe the data of organizations, especially organizations that capture and keep data of other persons, otherwise known as personally identifiable information. These laws are in place. We have them in Nigeria. They exist in China. They exist in the UK. They exist in the US. They exist in Germany, Ireland, everywhere. And every violation normally would require a penalty. And the penalties could be very, very severe. For instance, there is a company called Didi Global in China. I think they've had the biggest fine for not protecting their data to date. They were hit for 1.1, approximately 1.2, really, $1.2 billion. That's in China, $1.2 billion. That's Didi. And when you are hit in that manner, you must pay. It's a law. You violate the law, you must meet the penalty. And so, how many organizations in the world can withstand a fine of $1.2 billion? A lot of companies will just fold up. What about Amazon? Amazon was hit for $877 million in 2021 for not protecting their data properly. And these are breaches against the GDPR that I just mentioned, General Data Protection Regulation that exists and operates in Europe. There are a number of companies like Equifax. Equifax was hit for $575 million. That was about 5 years ago, $575 million. And then if you talk about Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, all of these were hit across the past few years at different times. In Nigeria, we have also had a few of our entities that were penalized for not protecting the data that they have. The companies that we work for, the data that we have today, given the new data protection law that has been signed into effect by our president in 2023 in the month of June, I can almost tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that we'll begin to see cases of penalties even more going into the future. So everyone needs to be ready, to be aware, and to be protected. protected. And so, in conclusion, cybercrime continues to account for more and more financial losses to organizations. Also, the leak of private data and information could have negative effects on individuals and organizations, including huge fines. We've mentioned some of the huge fines already by the regulatory bodies. And by the way, if you have data of anyone, any international person, you collect their data and you violate the data gets breached, you can get heavily penalized. If you have the data of Nigerians, you collect such data and they get breached, the Nigerian regulators could also impose penalties and fines. And from what we have seen, the fines and the penalties are increasing. Apart from the fines and penalties, even the sheer fact that there was a data breach, a significant data breach that makes the headlines, that itself in itself could be a major problem in terms of reputation, in terms of lost business, in terms of loss of confidence. So it is a very big problem. It's an area that requires the attention of everyone. There's therefore a need for all stakeholders to keep the focus on securing the data, securing the networks and systems always. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank all of you for being here. Let us make the most of this event and work together to reinforce the trust and confidence that underpin the key role that the HRO function plays in the entire ecosystem. I wish you all very engaging and fruitful time. Thank you very much.